Your IXL assignment is KK.10 underneath Algebra 1. So you'll need to sign into IXL and then click on the Learning tab. And this is under Algebra 1. So under Learning, this is Math, scroll down and find Algebra 1. It's this greenish color. And then it will be starred for you. You're going to go all the way to the very end, and it's KK.10. It'll have a little star next to it for you. Your goal is going to get a 70 or higher SMART score on this session. And we're going to just start by matching the correlation coefficient to the appropriate scatter plot. So you have a 50-50 shot of getting these right, and we just need to remember what the correlation coefficient tells us about our data. So the closer to 1 or -1 our correlation coefficient is, the tighter together our data sits to the regression line. So my two choices right here are r equals -1 and r equals positive 0.5. And I have two choices right here. I notice that one of my graphs is going up. It's a positive slope. That should help you narrow down some of these as well as just looking at the positive versus negative. And then this one right here, even though it's so slight, this line does go down from left to right. I'm going to start over here, and I notice that all these blue dots are super, super close to the actual line that's being drawn on the graph. That means my correlation coefficient is going to be super, super close to 1, but in this case, it's going to be -1 because the slope of this line is negative. This data over here is super scattered out. It's kind of all over the place. So that means that my correlation coefficient is going to be closer to 0. Again, these are pretty simple to kind of tell the difference between. If they're scattered out, they're going to be far away from 1 or close to 0. I can also see that this line's negative, so that helps me decide that this correlation coefficient is a negative number. This data is a positive correlation, positive slope, and they're all sit really, really close together on the regression line. That means that my data has a correlation coefficient super close to +1. Hopefully by now you're kind of seeing the gist of how we're matching these up. If they're super close together, that means your correlation coefficient is close to a value of 1 or -1 if the data is negatively related. Now here's one that's a little bit different. All the data is scattered, but the difference is that this one right here has a slightly positive slope. You can kind of see that the line goes up. And this one right here has a slightly negative slope. You can kind of see that the line goes down. This one over here on the right is also more widely scattered than the one on the left. So I know that this one where I'm pointing is going to have a correlation coefficient pretty close to 0 because it's so scattered. So that means that this one, the -0.1, that's really close to 0, and it has the negative relationship that I'm looking for as well. We'll do a couple more of these just so you can kind of see some different problems. The ones that are super tight and close together are easier to determine. Trying to look for one that's a little bit harder. Here we go. All right, so if your line has 0 slope at all, that means that your correlation is 0 because your data is all over the place. You can see how widely scattered out all of these data points are from the line. This one is still pretty scattered, but not nearly as bad as the one over here on the left. And then we can see that the slope of this line is negative. We're going to have a negative correlation coefficient.